It's looking heavy on the M25 anti-clockwise. A lane's closed between Junction 6 for Godstone and Junction 5 for the M26 because a car's broken down. They're accused in St Paul's Cray on the A20 Sidcup bypass eastbound. 2 lanes are closed between Frittles Corner and the M25. That's because of an accident. In West Molesey in Surrey, Molesey Road is closed in both directions because of an accident at Poole Road. In Watford, the A405 North Orbital stays closed in both directions because of a serious accident between Sheepcut Lane and Horseshoe Lane. That's close to the leisure park. And on the Tube, engineering work means there's no district line between Turnham Green and Richmond today. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. Well, since I was last with you on Thursday evening, the entirely predictable has happened. You know, when Donald Trump tweets the missiles are coming, I thought, yeah, he probably means it. And we had the cabinet meeting that took place on Friday. And of course, there was no real news came out of that cabinet meeting. So I kind of thought, yeah, it's going to happen. Well, it has happened. About 120 missiles fired into Syria at a variety of sites, many said to be chemical weapons factories, others were military installations. Let's listen to what Theresa May had to say the morning after.
When the Cabinet met on Thursday, we considered the advice of the Attorney-General, the National Security Advisor and the Chief of the Defence Staff. And we were updated on the latest assessment and intelligence picture. And based on this advice, we agreed that it was both right and legal to take military action.
So the government's confident that legally it could do this without the United Nations. Of course, that doesn't work because Russia would simply veto it. And, you know, she believes that she's done absolutely the right thing. And it's interesting. If you look through the Sunday papers this morning, you find a lot of them are very supportive. But one or two ask the question, why was this done without first seeking parliamentary approval? That question is being asked today. Let's listen to hear what Jeremy Corbyn had to say.
Parliament should be consulted, Parliament should be allowed to take a view on this, but instead the strikes were launched. She claims there is a legal basis for it. I've asked her in a letter to publish in full the legal basis and justification for it.
So, Jeremy Corbyn asking legal questions, Jeremy Corbyn saying Parliament should have been consulted, but what we're not seeing virtually anywhere this morning is any outright opposition to what happened, you know, overnight, Friday into Saturday. I find that very, very interesting. I have a hunch, I have a feeling that public opinion is going to be very different to that we're getting from the newspapers, our television screens and our radio airwaves. I think there are quite a lot of people out there concerned about what we're perhaps once again getting ourselves into. That's my thought on it. But let's go. Let's ask Kate Hoey, Labour MP for Vauxhall. And she's had a history of being against these kind of airstrikes. Kate, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
So how do you feel about this one, Kate? Was it the right thing to do?
Well, what I really genuinely would have liked, I sat last week expecting Parliament to be called back, because I think there's no doubt about it, when there's a parliamentary debate on this, that people do genuinely listen. You know, we have this thing about Parliament is shown at its best, but I remember so vividly when we had the debate on the Iraq War, and I went into that debate really not quite sure what I was going to do. And during that debate, I became more and more clear that I was going to oppose because of what I'd heard. And I just wish that the Prime Minister had taken that opportunity to call us back and have a proper debate, because then she would have been given a kind of mandate. If there'd been a vote, it probably would have gone through. And I think it would have given her a kind of feeling that the country would have known then that there was a general discussion on this and that we had gone that way. But having said that, you know, I think we also saw such, you know, some of the Trump texts over the last week or so really looked like it was going to be a huge assault. And I think why people probably have been perhaps more silent than you would have expected is because what we did see was definitely a very targeted, basically on 3 bases that we were told there were chemical weapons. Even the Russians and the Syrians have admitted that there was only, I think, 3 people injured. So it hasn't been that appalling bombing that we saw that went on in you know, previous assaults. Having said that, and then I'll stop, you know, I do think that the worry for me is, where does this lead? You know, is this now just going to lead to Assad feeling that he has to show that he's still in charge and he still can do what he wants? Perhaps another attack of some kind, which will be said to have used chemical weapons. Where are we then? Russia is not going to sit back.
I mean, Kate, clearly what's happening here, I mean, you know, Trump's press spokesman said we're locked and loaded, which means if there's another use of chemical weapons, even if we, I mean, it seems to me, even if we can't prove that it's Assad that did it, and I do, you know, I do note that the New York Times themselves said that ISIS had used chemical weapons 52 times during that civil war.
Oh, there's no doubt about it that some of the rebel groups have had access to certainly chlorine and some of the other chemical weapons that definitely have been used. And I think, again, that is the problem, that we could have waited until the Organisation for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons went in. I mean, it's ironic that they actually did this strike the day before they were coming in. And it seems like after 7 years of appalling killings and dreadful things happening in Syria, that suddenly there's this huge rush to do this when...
Well, clearly Donald Trump had decided he was going to do something.
Yeah, yes, but that's why it makes the Prime Minister look as if she is in just simply waiting for Donald Trump. I mean, as Jeremy Corbyn said, because if she had said to Donald Trump, I'm sorry, you know, on the whole we want to support you, but we need to call back our Parliament and have a debate and a discussion on this. And she just didn't do that.
They could have done it.
They could have easily done it.
Yeah, they could have called Parliament for Friday. That wouldn't have been difficult. And I remember, in fact, during the Falklands, Parliament actually met on Saturday.
That's right. I wasn't an MP then, but I remember that. And then, of course, we were called back. We've been called back various times. And the Speaker is very keen always to call people back. Yeah. So I'm sure it would have happened if someone had asked.
If they'd wanted it to. No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you know, Trump says they're locked and loaded. The British government have made it clear. So, I mean, it looks like this is not just a one-off attack. They're making it clear any more use of chemical weapons will lead to more attacks. I mean, do you think we're actually going to achieve... I mean, will we achieve anything through what happened the other night?
Well, the problem is Syria is full of minority sects, religious extremists, rebel groups, and has been for a very, very long time. It is a civil war that's going on, but it's not even a civil war where there are two sides. It's a civil war with all sorts of different factions with different aims. And Assad is an appalling dictator, or whatever you'd like to call him. But the reality is that even if he was to go tomorrow, we have no idea who would take over and whether they would be any better. And I think the only way we will get this settled, and it is always a sort of cliche that everybody uses, but it's true, is by some kind of political settlement. And that can only happen if we get the United States and Russia to actually sit down and try and sort something out. And I don't understand why, given that Trump was willing to go and meet the North Korean leader, why he just doesn't, you know, wouldn't it be amazing if he just suddenly got on a plane and
well, they
went
were
to
talking
Moscow.
About this. I mean,
yes.
2 weeks ago, he did say, I'm going to have a summit with Putin. And, you know, I do know Trump a little bit. My guess is that he will try and have that meeting at some point in time. And I agree with you. It would be a very, very good and sensible thing to do. But when I listen to the language coming out from Boris Johnson, Theresa May, and elements of the US administration, you know, it seems to me they still want Assad to go. They still... Effectively, they want regime change, but they're not going to fight for it because that would bring us into conflict with the Russians. I mean, do you think it would be better if Assad went?
I really don't think at this stage it would make any difference whatsoever. And I was pleased that she did say, the Prime Minister, in her statement, this was not about regime change. But I'm afraid, you know, I think the tone of everything that the British government's been saying and the American government is they don't like Assad and they would like him gone. Now, there are a lot of people, particularly Syrians, who have had to leave the country for all sorts of reasons, who would like Assad gone. But, you know, is it our responsibility as the United Kingdom government to make that happen? And, you know, we've seen the results of what we did when we went into Iraq to change the regime, although in theory it was about weapons of mass destruction, which, of course, the intelligence was completely wrong. And that's the other worry, you see. A lot of the public don't feel totally confident now about
They don't trust government. No, they don't.
They don't trust any of us.
I get this on all sorts of subjects. I'm in Salisbury as well. A lot of people now say, whoa, hang on. After WMD, we don't believe what the government tells us. Well, we'll see where we go with this one, but I have a feeling this may not be the last airstrike. I hope I'm wrong. But, Kate, of course, today must be a very busy day for you today, Kate, because, of course, there's a big series. In fact, up in Camden this afternoon, which, of course, they couldn't have picked a sort of richer district, and there'll be Sir Patrick Stewart, so they've got an actor, and Anna Soubry, and your own colleague Chuka Ramuna, and there's the big campaign, the day of action today, to push us to have another referendum. Will you be attending those rallies?
No, I certainly won't. And I mean, they had a big day of action, I think, across the country yesterday, but I didn't see many people involved in it. You know, I think this is a last gasp kind of an attempt by those who just cannot bear the fact that the British people actually didn't do what they thought they would. In other words, they voted to leave. And I think we just have to, those of us who are on the leave side, and many people all over the country who voted Remain but who just want to get on with it now, I think we just have to sort of almost watch them with a bit of a laugh and say, look, this is just ridiculous. This is not going to happen, and we have to get on with it. And I just hope our government, you know, really gets some muscle and gets into these negotiations and stands up for the country and doesn't feel that they've got to go along with everything the EU says, because we voted to leave, we've got to leave, and we've got to have a great future if we can get out as quickly as possible.
I was worried. I was worried a few months ago. I could see how well organised the Remain side were becoming. I think perhaps the key factor now is when Jeremy Corbyn sacked Owen Smith and then Sir Keir Starmer very much came in behind Corbyn and said, you know, there's not going to be a second referendum, we are leaving. That made it pretty clear to me that whatever the deal is, Labour effectively are going to support us leaving on March the 29th next year. Does that feel right to you as a Labour MP?
Yes, I think it will. And even though many of my parliamentary colleagues were strong Remainers, you know, there are a lot of them who don't say very much. There's always a small number who say a lot, but there's a lot of them who don't say very much, who know that they actually have to go along with whatever deal we can get, the best deal possible. And also, of course, Jeremy Corbyn himself, you know, who I've always will stick up for on the issue of the EU, because he has been an opponent all his life
Absolutely.
of the neoliberal kind of corrupt almost way that the EU has worked. And I feel confident that he will not, in the end, let down those Labour voters across the country who voted to leave.
And there's lots of them. There's about 4.5 million, by my calculations, who voted Brexit and then voted for Corbyn in the election. I think you're absolutely right to say that. Kate, thanks very much indeed for joining us on this Sunday morning. Thank you. Well, that was Kate Hervey, Labour MP for Vauxhall. In a minute, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about these airstrikes in Syria. I do not go with the consensus view that we see from our leading politicians and from our newspaper editorial columns this morning. I take a rather stronger position. But for now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 10:16.
LBC at the weekend. Andrew Castle.
You all know what gazumping is if you've been involved in this. You've probably spent thousands on the solicitor. You spent thousands on the surveys, the searches, the whole thing, and then you get gazumped for a higher price. That's disgraceful. That should be outlawed.
Leading Britain's conversation. Andrew Castle. Today from 3 on LBC.
No, this is not the sound of a refreshing drink being enjoyed outdoors in the sun, but the sound of itchy eyes being relieved. Optrex Acti-Mist 2-in-1 spray helps relieve itchy and watery eyes. Now go and have that drink in the sun if you fancy. Optrex Acti-Mist, so you can open your eyes to spring.
In the Sunday Times Culture magazine this weekend, tune in and chill out with our Music Festival special. From family friendliness to food, we've considered everything to reveal the top summer events. Discover your perfect festival, from boutique experiences to those you can do in a day. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times this weekend.
Admiral, welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about your deals for home and car insurance.
You mean our multi-cover deals?
Yes. Another insurance company saving us money?
Andrew, that's not us. We're different. Our car and home insurance customers can upgrade to multi-cover and get a great deal.
Car and home insurance on one policy?
Just go to admiral.com and see our multi-cover deals for yourself.
Do you hear that?
That's the unmistakable sound of cashback. Do you hear that? That's the sound of cashback too. There it is again. Listen.
Earn money back on every pound spent at places like petrol stations, supermarkets or local restaurants with your American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. No annual fee. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Terms and minimum annual spend applies.
SAP Concur does what might seem impossible for your business. It makes employees happy and finance happy. How? Well, employees love automated expense claims and invoices they can submit and approve from anywhere. And finance loves that they have full visibility into employee spend. Plus, SAP Concur integrates with leading finance systems, making the process better for everyone. SAP Concur. Expense, travel, invoice. Learn more at concur.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Over the last few days, we've heard all the same voices. Yes, the same voices that supported the war in Iraq, the same voices that supported the war in Libya, the same voices who in 2013 wanted us to arm the rebels against Assad. Good job we didn't listen to them, otherwise we'd have finished up giving guns and money effectively to ISIS. But all the same people arguing again and again and again for military intervention. We're told it'll be okay. This is not about regime change. The Prime Minister made that clear. But if there are any more uses of chemical weapons, we will do it again. And given that we know the opposition to Assad have chemical weapons, seems to me we've given something of a hostage to fortune. The idea that because it's a surgical strike, it'll work and it'll be no problem and teach him a lesson, how does that work? Because last April, Trump on his own did send in nearly 60 cruise missiles, and a year later we're doing the same thing again. So we and the French have backed the Americans on this, and there are many, many people in America who are Trump supporters who really have a bit of a conflict over this. You know, one of the main reasons Trump got elected was to be against Hillary's continued military intervention. So I know that Trump supporters are very, very split. But to believe the press this morning, you would think the country overwhelmingly believes it was right to launch these strikes, but maybe there should have been a parliamentary debate on Friday. Well, with or without a parliamentary debate, even if the House of Commons had approved it, as indeed it did with the invasion of Libya and the bombing of Libya, even if they had, my view is we shouldn't be getting involved. And when Theresa May tells us in her speech that we're doing this in our national interest, oh, pull the other one. This is not in our national interest at all. If you believe it'll stop a further use of chemical weapons, then at least you have moral grounds for doing it. Don't try and pretend to me this is in our national interest. It isn't. And my guess, folks, is there going to be a lot of you out there who agree with my point of view. Hey, challenge me. Tell me I'm completely off beam by calling 0345 6060 973. Tweet and tell me how wrong I've got it on 84850. On text on 84850. Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And as ever, of course, you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. And our first caller is Barry, who is a first-time caller from Norwich in Norfolk. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am well, but I have to be honest, Barry, you know, I have said that the usual suspects always support military intervention, and they would say, actually, I'm one of the usual suspects who's always very cautious about the use of military intervention. But, I mean, are you convinced by the Prime Minister's arguments on this?
Nigel, I just put my head in my hands. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. This country in America has been at war with someone since 1991 with the first Gulf War. And it's just turned on and on and on. I don't believe a word this government says. I don't believe a word of it. Yeah, I don't see how firing missiles into Syria is going to help the Syrian people. I don't see how it's not in my national interest for them to do that. Yeah, and Donald Trump throwing out tweets about it's going to be worse than the Cold War and got smart new missiles coming over. If you can't be doing things like that, it's just all wrong. And personally believe the reason why she didn't go to Parliament was this, because she was scared, and I think she would have lost the vote.
Well, you see, that's interesting, Barry, isn't it? Because, you know, back in 2013, when Cameron and Osborne and Hague put this to Parliament, they thought, oh, it'll be a breeze. But there were many of us on the outside campaigning hard in the constituencies, and there was a big rebellion. Miliband also changed, you know, having equivocated, decided to come out against, and there were lots and lots of Tory rebels. And I do wonder, Barry, whether you're right, whether they feared they might lose a parliamentary debate. But Barry, let me put to you the Boris Johnson argument on this. You know, Boris says that this is a big moral question, that since the First World War, you know, chemical weapons have not been used, and that unless we're firm on this, the use of chemical weapons in future conflicts could become normalised.
Well, yeah, but we have no. It's the same with Salisbury. We have no concrete proof that the president of Syria fired these, or give the authority, like in Russia. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? We don't. You know, we go round. Do you know what I mean? I get the whole chemical weapons thing. I get it. Yeah, right. Yeah. But you can't just go off hook like that and just start. You know.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Barry. It's interesting you say that, because on Salisbury, you know, Boris has said again and again, it's a slam dunk. They did it. The Russians did it. No question. Have a listen, Barry, to what Boris has written in today's Sunday Telegraph. He says, a significant body of information, including intelligence, suggests the Assad regime was behind the chemical attack that killed about 75 people. And the reason they say this is that a helicopter was in the vicinity at the time, and the other side don't have helicopters. They're doing this, actually, on pretty flimsy evidence.
Do you know, if someone got arrested on that evidence and went to court, the court would sling it out due to lack of evidence.
Yes, they would. Yes, they would.
Sure, yeah, you know, this wouldn't be allowed. I mean, Boris Johnson, I mean, he's a foreign secretary. He got that other one that looks like he should be in junior school as the defence secretary. You know, and we got Theresa.
He's the one that said Russia should shut up and go away, wasn't he?
I mean, you can't. I mean,
I wasn't sure his voice had broken, actually, Barry, when I heard that.
I lived through the 80s, right, with the Cold War.
Yep.
I was a teenager. You know, and I was, you know, and it was not a very nice place to be. And I'm a Trump supporter. I like him. I get him. But the other day, when he was saying what he was saying, he actually did worry me.
Yep.
Yeah, right. I thought, you know what? Because,
There's Barry, there are quite a lot of Trump supporters who are slightly concerned about this. Barry, thanks very much indeed for your call. And Barry, they're a first-time caller to the show who's got his head in his hands. Are you listening, newspaper editors? There are lots of people out there who take a very different view. That's what I think, anyway. Linda is calling from Manchester, another first-time caller. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am okay. So, what do you make of the positions of Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn, Donald Trump? What do you think?
Well, my opinion is that the only person that can actually has the knowledge, the experience, the parliamentary experience and the world experience to deal with this, to actually converse with Russia and President Putin to be, don't like the man, but he has a very tough job, and I think he's the only person to be there, and so is Jeremy Corbyn. I think
Jeremy Corbyn?
Jeremy Corbyn would be the best person to speak to Vladimir Putin and all the regimes that are working at the moment.
I'll tell you what, Linda, I'm going to take issue with you on one point. You talked about world experience. Jeremy Corbyn has very little experience of the world at all. You know, I mean, he has never really... He's never really been out there and worked in the real world. He's been in Parliament for 35 years.
But the young people like him. And
yes.
And he has managed to do to the party what my late MP, my friend, our family friend and late MP, Sir Joel Kaufman, God, I've lost my thread now, Nigel.
No, what do you... I mean, look,
Spaniel's biting my hand as well.
The hazards of being at home on a Sunday. I mean, Linda, as I say, I don't believe Jeremy Corbyn has world experience at all. Okay, but I get your point. You know, he's very popular with young people. He's multiplied the membership of the Labour Party, and those things clearly are achievements. I wouldn't for one moment want to take that away. But how could he, as an opposition leader, go to meet Putin? I mean, surely it's got to be the Prime Minister, hasn't it?
No. Well, first of all, obviously, we've got to get Jeremy as Prime Minister.
Right.
Of course, that's the plan.
Well, by then, I tell you what, Linda, by then, goodness knows how many more missiles we may well have fired off. But
hopefully,
no,
hopefully not. Waste of money when people are struggling with the NHS, the staff, the patients. You know, it's horrendous. You need to get somebody in who will speak for the people.
So why, Linda? When Corbyn, and you may have heard a clip I played from Jeremy Corbyn earlier on the show. Right. Corbyn today is talking about procedure. He's talking about the legality of the attack. He's talking, about whether Parliament should have been consulted, and he believes it should.
Yes, it should, definitely.
But Jeremy Corbyn hasn't come out and spoken completely outright and said these attacks are wrong. Do you think he should?
I will not speak for Jeremy Corbyn. He's clearly absolutely capable of speaking for himself. But
he's not saying much.
Well, maybe he's keeping his powder dry, I think, and he knows what he thinks and what he's about to do.
Linda, what would you like him to say?
Oh, no, I'm not going to go down.
All right, OK, Linda, thanks for the call. Linda, a real Corbyn loyalist there, and your messages coming in. I totally agree with Theresa May's decisive action. Let's not forget, Russia has already carried out a chemical attack on UK soil, says Liz in Ruislip. And there was that linkage being made yesterday morning by Theresa May in her press conference. Sally says, what's the point of having UN red lines if you are not prepared to stand by them and take action? We tried talking, and Russia said no. You are completely wrong. Mari says, very wrong not to give MPs the chance to vote, as it's what Parliament is about. Yes, Mari, you could argue that, but equally you could say, why would you have a debate that warned your enemy, in inverted commas, of what you were about to do? Mind you could say, Trump had already done that, hadn't he, by saying the missiles are coming. Having, during his campaign, said that Obama was dumb to say what he would do before he did it. And I do begin to think, maybe there are a lot of people around the president from what Eisenhower 60 years ago called the military-industrial complex. He's obviously listening a lot to those people, or Trump actually believes morally he had no choice seeing those pictures of children. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 10:30 and time for the news with Andy Ivey.
Jeremy Corbyn is calling for a War Powers Act to give Parliament more scrutiny over military action after yesterday's missile strikes against Syria. The Labour leader is warning of an escalation in a proxy war between the US and Russia. The UK, US and France have presented plans for a ceasefire in Syria. A draft UN resolution also includes proposals for an independent investigation into alleged poison gas attacks. Sir Martin Sorrell says he's resigning as head of the advertising giant WPP because of how claims of personal misconduct have affected the company. It's despite him being cleared of wrongdoing by an internal investigation. LBC weather, cooler, cloudy and windier for most today. Rain will move northeastwards, highs of 15 degrees.
LBC travel in Kent, it's stop-start on the M20 westbound. 2 lanes are closed between junction 2 for Ruton, Brands Hatch and the M25 at the Swanley interchange because of an accident. Then in St Paul's Cray on the A20, Sidcup bypass eastbound, they're accused towards the M25 at Swanley. 2 lanes are closed from Crittles Corner to the M25 because of an accident. In Surrey, it's looking heavy on the M25 anti-clockwise. A lane's closed between junction 6 for Godstone and junction 5 for the M26 because a car's broken down. In Westminster, Victoria Street westbound is closed because of some emergency repairs around Great Smith Street. And on the Tube, engineering work means there's no district line between Turnham Green and Richmond today. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Want to get your garden blooming? At B&Q, do it for less this weekend with 20% off all outdoor plants. You better hurry though, offer ends Monday. So for low prices on beautiful plants, you can do it when you B&Q it. Offer starts Friday 13th of April, seeds, turf and garden bulbs not included.
Your future is here. The Global Academy. A forward-thinking state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Get the very best start in your media career at a school where you can study GCSE and A-levels alongside the vocational media qualifications you need. Visit globalacademy.com to find out more.
Looking for reliable and skilled warehousing staff? SIFT is the hassle-free staffing service that brings your perfect team to you. For any kind of industrial or warehousing roles, from pickers and packers to delivery van drivers. With SIFT, you get instant access to fully trained workers who are ready to go. Sort through online profiles and have complete control over who you hire. Find the perfect team with Sift. That's SYFT. Visit siftapp.com/warehousing.
When the beast from the east struck, snow fell, temperatures plummeted, and the country ground to a halt. But Swale Heating leapt into action. Over the week, we helped over 10,000 homes stay warm and safe. To find out more about our boiler installations and maintenance schemes, visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
We've been thinking about the nuclear family, that vision of mum, dad and their 2.4 children, and how times have changed. How we're now living longer and our kids are leaving home later. So we thought, with all this change, shouldn't we change the way we think about mortgages? So we now cater for all types of family and are trying to turn generation rent into generation buy. Mortgages for how life is now. NatWest. We are what we do.
Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
If you choose BT Infinity right now, you could make an epic saving of over £150. It's $29.99 a month, usually $35.99 on an 18-month contract. And get this, there's no activation fee, saving you £50. How does that sound? But you need to be pretty quick because the sale ends on the 16th of April. Search BT Broadband. Be there, BT.
$9.99 delivery prices may change. $41.99 a month from month 19. New customers pay direct debit. Subject to availability and minimum line speed. Terms apply.
Zing Flowers. Beautiful hand-tied bouquets delivered the very same day when ordered before 12 noon. Zingflowers.com.
Amazing every time.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, I take the view that our track record on military intervention over the course of the last 15 years has been abysmal. The reasons we were given for going into Iraq have eroded public trust in government and in the whole democratic process. We have got rid of Arab nationalist dictators, albeit ones who were secular, and we've made the whole region destabilised. We've opened up the door for ISIS. We have got this wrong in the past. And you know something? Whether we like Assad or not, I'm sure we don't. The fact is, if he was to be removed, if we continued with these strikes because there were more use of chemical weapons, I think we would actually, given that he's just almost beaten ISIS militarily, give them a fresh lease of life. So I don't know. Apart from a short-term objective, I don't know what the bigger plan or the bigger game is here, but I'm listening to those same voices who I believe have been wrong on virtually everything else. And Tony says to me via text, he says, "Hi Nigel, what happens when the rebels use chemical weapons again? Do we bomb Assad also?" Well, this is the point, Tony. If I was part of that beleaguered rebel group who we know have chemical weapons, I'd make sure there was another chemical attack as quickly as there possibly could be, and to make it look like it was the Assad regime that did it, because then we've given the hostage to fortune already. The Americans say they're locked and loaded, and Theresa May says that we will strike again. So, my other problem with this is the reasons we are given for doing things. This is what Theresa May said yesterday morning.
I have taken this decision because I believe it is the right thing to do. I believe it is in our national interest.
Really? Well, please give us a call. Anybody from Number 10's press department, please give us a call and tell us how it is in our national interest to get involved in this Syrian conflict. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. Perhaps any of you, please tell me why I'm wrong. 0345 6060 973. And I say these things to you this morning, looking, as I say, at the newspaper editorials, and whilst one or two question whether Parliament should have been asked, virtually everybody this morning seems to think that the government have done the right thing. I don't. Tell me I am wrong. Linda on Facebook says, "Don't agree with the bombing. Look at the other countries we've meddled in. This will be no different. Just makes matters worse." Roger says, "Isn't it shocking that we no longer trust our own government and the things they tell us?" Shocking. Yes, Roger. And I think Tony Blair has an awful lot to answer for with his weapons of mass destruction warning. Ray, I agree with Nigel. It is definitely not in the nation's interests. Ray, it's this national interest point that I think, why did Theresa May choose to use that line, to emphasise it the way that she did yesterday morning? I just don't buy it. Tina says, we should never go to war on supposition. Why do we keep acting before the investigations are complete and answers given? Asif is calling from Battersea. Good morning, Asif.
Hello, Nigel. Unfortunately, I'm going to agree with you as well.
Oh, dear.
Like many of your callers. I mean, if we look at this and piece it together, geopolitically, I mean, we have actually supported ISIS by destabilising Assad. Now, the Americans, the British, the French, and the Israelis have been dropping bombs and basically on Assad positions, for God knows how long. Yeah. And therefore, basically supporting ISIS, because ISIS always seem to flow against the countries that basically we are trying to destabilise. So, for instance, you never see ISIS trying to attack Israel, the UAE, or basically Saudi Arabia. They're always attacking the very countries that we want to destabilise, and the neocons in the United States government that have basically wanted to destabilise and been talking about destabilising for the last 20 years. Plus, I mean, if you look at the weapons drops, the funding, Hillary Clinton has gone on record saying we potentially have funded ISIS through the Free Syrian Army. I mean, and all the big weapons drops.
Yeah, and that's exactly, Asif, exactly what Cameron's government wanted to do in 2013, and thank goodness they were beaten by a vote in Parliament.
I mean, the thing is, there's even a WikiLeaks cable saying that we're doing it through Saudi. I mean, you've got to, if you look and piece together WMB sexing up a dossier, I mean, unfortunately, and this is a real shame because we have got some very good military men, but the only military men we are hearing from are the ones who are worried about their next cushy number in Whitehall, or, the ones who want to become politicians, or the next defence attaché in Whitehall. It's these career...
well, you'll be very pleased, Asif. You'll be very pleased to hear that a bit later on in the show, at about 11:30, I'm going to have the former First Sea Lord Admiral West is going to come onto this programme, and he actually is starting to ask some very real questions. Asif, I thank you very much for your thoughts and your call. You see, folks, I'm looking for callers tell me, Theresa May's got this absolutely right. Tell me it's in our national interests. Tell me that every single newspaper virtually today, has got it right. Tell me they're all right. Tell me that I've got this completely and utterly wrong. And yet I see a huge gulf between what is being said and thought in London by most of the political class and by a huge amount of the liberal mainstream media, and how ordinary folk out there in the country feel. I've got a very strong hunch about this. Terry from Worthing says Parliament wasn't sitting and Donald wasn't going to wait. But Terry, the point Kate made was that Parliament could have been recalled for an emergency debate on Friday. I made the point that on the 3rd of April 1982, Parliament sat on a Saturday to discuss the Falklands War. How do I remember that? Because it was my 18th birthday. It wasn't that difficult to forget. But, if they'd really wanted Parliament to sit, it could have done so. Rex in Upton says, as usual, Mrs May has made the wrong call and Corbyn the right one. She's acting against her parliamentary remit. Well, legally, she has executive power. And let's just think about this. If the country actually was directly under threat, I mean, if we knew there were bomber planes headed for Britain, and we had 35 minutes notice, clearly Parliament couldn't be recalled. And of course, we would want our government to have the ability to act in that situation. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But I think the argument for Parliament having a say is that, in fact, we weren't under direct threat ourselves at all. In fact, the even stronger argument is that nothing in our national interest was being threatened at all, which is maybe why she made that argument yesterday morning, that it was in our national interest. I don't really care, myself, whether Parliament had a vote on this or not. I just don't think we're doing the right thing. And if you think about this week, the idea that this week there'll be a debate and maybe a retrospective vote on something that's happened already, well, that frankly would be, I think, just a little bit pointless. Chris says, I'm glad someone has the courage to stand up and do what is right. I don't know which side you're referring to, Chris, but hey. I'm normally with you 100%, but definitely not on this. We did a joint demonstration to show Putin that, well, OK, the Syrian strike is a token demonstration and a test of Putin's defences. Rick in Manchester, if you want to play poker with Vladimir Putin, you can do so. I would recommend that we're just a little bit cautious, perhaps, about doing that. Nigel, this has nothing to do with Syria. There is money in war, and the US, UK and France have spotted an opportunity. Well, that's very, very deeply cynical. Everyone said it was going to be World War III when Trump challenged North Korea. Now they are meeting at the table. Agreed. Please do not confuse Trump with Bush and Blair. Trump keeps all the options open. Trump's believed in peace through strength. Yeah, OK. Look, I've been a big supporter of Trump's foreign policy, huge supporter of what he's done with Saudi Arabia, saying to them, you know, reform, change, and we will start doing business with you in a big way, and reform is happening. What he's done with North Korea, when everybody else tried to brush it under the carpet, was great. I'm just not sure on this that the president has actually got this right, but it may well be. It may well be he does have the next couple of moves on the chessboard planned, and none of us know it. Graham says the national interest is oil, energy and money. Well, and security may just come in there, Graham, somewhere too. Neil is calling from... How do I pronounce the name of your town, Neil?
St Asaph.
St Asaph. Where is that?
In North Wales.
Right, I've learnt something this morning. Neil, the floor is yours.
I don't necessarily support the strike, but I can see why, Theresa May feels it is in the national interest. You know, she, along with yourself, to be honest, has fought elections based on reducing immigration, and by her bombing Syria, I suppose it's less likely that the Syrians are going to come over here.
Neil, I do understand. I do understand that destabilisation and war mean that people want to flee, and that there've been numbers of Syrians trying to cross the Mediterranean, albeit they've been piggybacked on by people from all over the world who try to use the opportunity. But I understand that point. Okay, Neil, let me put it to you the other way round.
Okay.
If we go on sending missiles because there are seen to be more chemical attacks, and if the effect of what we do, albeit I will admit this was smaller scale than I'd feared, but if the effect of all of this was that Assad actually got removed, that we finished up with regime change, I put it to you, Neil, that if ISIS started to return in strength to that area, bringing with them their sheer barbarism, that actually the numbers of people fleeing Syria would increase, not decrease, as a result of what we'd done.
Oh, no, to be honest, Nigel, I totally agree with you. I was being sarcastic with my original point.
Oh, sorry. I missed it. Yeah, gosh, I must get out more, Neil, mustn't I?
I think it's very, very strange that Theresa May and the government have said that they will not bring in Syrian refugees, including was it 5,000 Syrian children?
Yeah.
And said that they wouldn't bring them over from Calais, but at the same, but she's so concerned of the welfare of them because now that Assad is using chemical weapons, obviously bombing them with conventional weapons is a much better idea. So it's that aspect of it. I don't think the children of Syria actually really care which way they're killed. I think they just want the whole thing to stop.
So is it better to leave Assad and the Russians, to drive ISIS out of Syria, and to say leave well alone?
Is it better to... Sorry.
Is it better to leave Assad and the Russians, to drive ISIS out, and to leave things well alone?
Assad and the Russians should be driving ISIS out, perhaps the United Nations should be considering doing a joint effort in removing ISIS from all countries. Now that I tell you what, Neil, if the United Nations came up with a resolution like that, I would think that great big building on 2nd Avenue, which interestingly has the lights on all night in every single office, I would then think it might be worth the money. Great suggestion, Neil. I thank you. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 10:47.
This is LBC.
Because you knew I'd cry and had a tissue ready. Thank you for being the best friend. Love, Sarah.
Zingflowers.com. Beautiful hand-tied bouquets delivered the very same day when ordered before 12 noon. Zing Flowers. Amazing every time.
Your future is here. The Global Academy, a forward-thinking state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Study GCSEs and A-levels alongside the vocational media qualifications you need. Want to know more? Come to our next open day on Tuesday the 8th of May. Register at globalacademy.com.
At Boots Opticians, we're here to help you discover a stylish new look for less. We've got thousands of frames to choose from, so speak to us and together we'll find the perfect pair for you. In fact, with 2 pairs from £75, why stop at just one? Book in store or at boots.com. Boots, let's feel good. 2 for £75 on Boots £50 glasses as part of our half-price additional pairs offer. Both pairs must be bought for the same customer in the same transaction, subject to availability. See in store.
We've been thinking about pruning. Not your peonies or your privet, but your cost of living. And how, from broadband to mobile phones, these days we're all looking for ways to trim our spending. And then we thought, couldn't we help you cut back on your biggest outgoing? And we thought, yes, we could. So we'll always try to help you remortgage to a better rate and save on your monthly repayments. Mortgages for how life is now. NatWest. We are what we do.
Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Freshening up your fencing? At B&Q you can get 12 litres of Ronseal Fence Life One Coat for just £11, Ronseal Precision Sprayer for £23 and a Ronseal Fence Life Brush for just £7.98. So for low prices on garden project essentials, you can do it when you B&Q it.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Nigel, if Mrs May says we had to act to stop chemical weapons being used in a far-off land, why did we not bomb Russia, who has used chemical weapons on our shores against British citizens? Hypocrite is a word that springs to mind, says Ali in Northampton. Well, yes, I don't think... What is interesting, Ali, about what was done by the USA, the UK and France, but pointedly not Germany, Merkel making that very, very clear. Clearly what was done was designed not to embroil the Russians in this conflict. And that, again, shows what really quite dangerous territory we are treading on here. Syria and Russia, not only allies, but they've been fighting there together for the last few years against the rebels, and a big chunk of those rebels have in fact turned out to be extremists in the shape of ISIS. Everyone said it would be World War III when Trump challenged North Korea. But imagine if things escalated and Boris Johnson was our foreign secretary. Well, there we are. Not all of you think Boris would be the right man in the situation of World War III. I don't know. What does John in Golders Green think?
Hi, Nigel. You there?
I certainly am.
I've never disagreed with you ever since you came to public prominence, but I have to disagree with you now.
Okay.
This is not about Syria. This is about chemical weapons, pure and simple. And to not respond would to be condoning it, and to move that red line, whatever it is, a little bit further back. And I would like to feel that our response would have been the same had it been in any other country that had been proved to be using chemical weapons. I would just like to address the previous text you wrote before I came on, which is why we're not responding to Russia in the same way. Clearly, we bombed 3 chemical weapons sites of importance in Syria. Russia, I guess one wouldn't know where to start, and would be an entirely different situation. However, we do have to respond to Russia, and we have responded to Russia. I don't think our response has gone anywhere far enough. I think FIFA on Monday morning should walk in and announce that the whole World Cup is being relocated. Not us, not us boycotting it, but FIFA should simply announce that the World Cup is relocating. It would be very simple to do. We could host it, Germany could host it, France could host it. We've got all the infrastructure, and that would send a much more powerful message to the Russians than any individual country.
Yes, I mean, if you wanted real international disapproval of Mr. Putin, that would be a very effective way of doing it. Of course, the World Cup being a massive showcase for Putin and Russia, all of which made me wonder why you'd want to knock out a spy who defected to the other side 12 years ago and was living in retirement in a small close in Salisbury,
but Nigel, that
and risk all of that
anymore.
And risk all of that
anymore because forget about that. Let's assume they had nothing to do with it, and there have been all kinds of theories about that, which I've been listening to for the last 6 weeks. But in the case of Syria, they have openly been seen to be supporting the use of chemical weapons, and that is enough to make them culpable.
Okay, John, you know, I mean, there were roughly 1 million soldiers on the Western Front affected by gas during from 1915 to 1918. And indeed, many of them were dying decades later, you know, having suffered mustard gas and lived pretty ghastly lives. And I'm old enough to remember people who had suffered from mustard gas and they were very, very debilitated by it. So the 1925, you know, the world comes together, bans the use of chemical weapons and gas, and in World War II, on the battlefield, you know, those weapons are not used at all. And I understand what you're saying, but John, do you not have to be absolutely convinced that Assad was guilty of this attack when you know that the other side have chemical weapons and have used them as well?
I don't think they have to be absolutely convinced, because, as I just said, it's not about Assad, it's not about regime change, it's not about Syria. It's about destroying the chemical weapons facilities that are proven to be there.
Okay,
and that's why Theresa May said what she said. And that's why I have to disagree with you on that. All right. Because it is good for the country that we do this, because we have to do it.
Well, you know, Boris Johnson says a significant body of information, including intelligence, suggests that the Assad regime was behind the chemical attack. Doesn't sound very sure to me, but yours is a bigger, broader point that it is about chemical weapons. And John, that's a very principled position. I just worry sometimes about what the real motives behind these things are. And I'm pleased, John, that the strikes were as limited as they were, because when I listened to the language that was coming from Trump, I thought, gosh, something absolutely massive is about to happen. So, John, having done this, and don't forget we did the same thing, or the Americans did the same thing last year, what do you think we should do next?
I think we should wait and see, but I definitely think that FIFA should walk in on Monday morning and relocate the World Cup.
Okay, we've got the FIFA point, John, thank you, and I've no doubt, actually, that what John raises there about FIFA is something that we'll debate over the course of the coming weeks, given this deterioration that we've got. Amal is a first-time caller from Tunbridge Wells. Good morning.
Good morning, Sir Nigel. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Great show. Really enjoying the topics of discussion.
Good.
I've got to say one thing before I say anything else.
Yep.
The political classes won't, but you are a knight in our hearts. I think you've done a fantastic job to invoke the whole Brexit scenario. With this topic currently being talked about, listen, we have got Brexit on our doorstep. We're dealing with this situation, which is very important domestically. Instead, we are pursuing Syria, who hasn't attacked us or any of our interests. And if it is even proven that chemical weapons were used, there are so many more countries in and around Syria, Middle East, Saudi, etc., who have got a greater responsibility to deal with their neighbours than us, a European country far away. Do we want Syrian refugees turning up on our doorstep because of our involvement? Do we really need more problems? We have got to deal with domestic issues and Brexit. The Prime Minister's focus should be purely on this matter and not involving herself in issues that are not directly connected to us. Humanitarian reasons. If that was the case, where was our efforts with the Burmese people, Rohingyans, when they were being killed? Is a child's life less valuable in Burma than it is in Syria?
Well, you're right, of course, Amal. I mean, the
very, very clearly minded view on these things.
Yeah, the government have published, indeed, their legal basis for taking this action. And yes, humanitarian intervention is the main reason that is given in it. But as you say, we are quite selective, are we not, about where we decide to intervene for humanitarian reasons. And well, let me ask you the other question that my last caller felt very strongly about, John, that you know, chemical weapons, the use of chemical weapons is abominable, and we ought to do our best to stop them from ever being used again.
Absolutely agree, but so many abominable things are taking place around the world. Can we afford to get involved in every one of them?
No.
If we get involved in every one, that's one thing. But selectively getting involved when it is not in our domestic interest, really? Is that what we need to focus on now? Theresa May, I am a grassroots Tory supporter. Yep. Theresa May became PM through default, and she was initially considered to be the best of a bad bunch, but truly she's made complete hash of things. She should have brought you in and said, right, all of you who wanted out should now get the best deal for UK Limited. Instead, we've got Boris going around causing complete mayhem. We need to get Jacob Rees-Mogg in charge of this country and get this country.
Well, Amal, as a grassroots Tory member, you will have a say on that at some point in time. You really will. And I tell you what, Amal, you know, they were out of touch. The political mainstream were out of touch on the European debate. They thought being a member of the European Union was a settled issue, and this UKIP lot and this wretched Farage bloke, they're just a little annoyance. Let's promise a referendum, they'll all go away, it'll all be fine, and they were wrong. And you know what, Amal? I think on continued military intervention, whatever reasons they give us, I think they're wrong about this, I think the media are wrong about this, and that there are a lot of people out there in this country feel very, very strongly that we've had enough military intervention. Amal, I thank you. I've quickly got time for Robert from Bristol. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Nigel. Hypocrisy. I've just been watching the US, and there is a lot to be said for Trump, in my opinion. But I've heard them sounding off about the use of chemical weapons, as if, oh God, you know, they wouldn't dare think of them. When in fact, my memory, you see, a lot of people who haven't got a very long memory, it probably comes with me being so old, but I remember a war called Vietnam.
Yes.
And the foraging over the forests and jungles. They used tons and tons and tons of chemical weapons. They dropped chemical canisters. They distorted the growth of Vietnamese people. I saw pictures of babies and children with growing things that shouldn't ever be on their bodies, and that was via the USA. So I don't want them to come along and wave their finger. You see, you get lots of people that are good at doing that, but they're not very good at what they do. I remember the use of chemical weapons.
Robert, you've made a very powerful point. The use of napalm, Agent Orange, and all those things that did happen in Vietnam and happened on a huge scale. Robert, useful contribution. Thank you. Well, Theresa May is continuing to talk to Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump since the airstrikes in Syria. I guess the real question I want to start debating in the next hour is, should Britain take part in further airstrikes if this situation escalates? Are you happy for this to move on from being a one-off strike to perhaps being something more concerted if chemicals are used again by whatever side in this conflict? If you think we've got to stay there all the way through, call 0345 6060 973. If you think no, enough's enough, text 84850. Or maybe you want regime change and remove Assad. Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and watch us on Facebook. Comment there too. We're live from London next.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, at 11 o'clock, Jeremy Corbyn has again questioned the legal basis for the UK joining the US and France in airstrikes in Syria, and he's called for a War Powers Act to give Parliament more scrutiny over military action. The missile strikes were ordered in response to the suspected use of chemical weapons in Douma. Speaking on LBC, the Labour MP for Vauxhall, Kate Hoey, has told Nigel she's worried about what happens next.
Is this now just going to lead to Assad feeling that he has to show that he's still in charge and he still can do what he wants? Perhaps another attack of some kind which will be said to have used chemical weapons. Where are we then? Russia is not going to sit back.
But the former Defence Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, has told LBC the attacks were thoroughly justified.
It's very important that the world stands up when chemical weapons are used. These are war crimes. They're crimes against humanity. They're completely illegal, and we need to take action to stop them.
The UK, US and France are making a new attempt at the United Nations to investigate chemical weapons attacks in Syria. A draft resolution also calls for unimpeded deliveries of humanitarian aid and enforcing a ceasefire. Sir Martin Sorrell says he's resigned as head of the world's biggest advertising company because of the way claims of personal misconduct have affected the firm. He's leaving WPP despite being cleared of wrongdoing by an internal investigation. The 73-year-old was the highest paid FTSE 100 boss last year, earning £48 million. A murder investigation has begun after a man was shot in Birmingham. The 20-year-old was found in the Bawdsley area just after midnight. A report by MPs is criticising the decision by health bosses to use patient information to identify suspected illegal immigrants. NHS Digital allows the Home Office to request non-clinical details. Helen Stokes-Lampard from the Royal College of GPs says officials are alienating the most vulnerable.
I've likened it to turning GPs' databases into the yellow pages. If somebody can just look into the database and find patients' phone numbers and addresses, that opens it up into a way that will give people cause for concern, and I don't believe it's acceptable.
Opponents of Brexit are staging what they call a people power rally in London. Actor Sir Patrick Stewart is joining them to call for a referendum on the final exit deal. At the end of the Commonwealth Games, England finish second in the medals table with 45 golds. Wales have 10, Scotland won 9 and Northern Ireland end with 1. Birmingham will host the next Games in 4 years' time. LBC weather, cooler, cloudier and windier for most today. Rain will move northeastwards through the day and highs of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Andy Ivy.
So, Tom, what is a flat white?
It's a harmony of milk and espresso enveloping into one another with the stretching of milk to forge a silky, smooth microfoam.
Microfoam?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance of rich and smooth, strong and light.
You're reading it from the wall, aren't you?
Yeah, haven't a clue. But the lady at McDonald's said it was like a stronger latte with less milk.
Made with 100% Arabica beans, the Flat White is now part of the McCafe range at McDonald's. Great tasting coffee. Simple.
LBC travel in Kent, the Rockies on the M20 westbound. 2 lanes are closed between junction 2 for Route and Brands Hatch and the M25 at the Swanley interchange because of an accident. There are also queues in St Paul's Cray on the A20 Sidcup bypass eastbound. 2 lanes are closed from Crittles Corner to the M25 at Swanley because of an accident. In Surrey, it's looking heavy on the M25 anti-clockwise. A lane's closed between junction 6 for Godstone and junction 5 for the M26. That's because the car's broken down. In central London, the Piccadilly underpass is closed in both directions until 4 o'clock this afternoon because of roadworks. And on the tube, there's no district line between Turnham Green and Richmond today. That's because of engineering works. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, Prime Minister May is talking to Emmanuel Macron and to Donald Trump, and they're assessing the situation. And, of course, they've said that if there's any more use of chemical weapons, we will send in more missiles. And I'm asking whether you would support further airstrikes if this situation escalates. You can call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And, of course, you can follow us live and comment on Facebook too. Well, I don't know about more attacks. I'm really pretty questioning about the one we've done already. But you've heard enough from me, so let's get a military view. And let's go to Lord Alan West, former First Sea Lord, and man who ran the Royal Navy from 2002 to 2006. Good morning, Lord West.
Good morning.
So, was it right? Was it right to launch these attacks when we did?
I think assuming that the intelligence was unequivocal that Assad had actually used chemical weapons, I think it made sense to join the coalition to do a slap across his wrists to say, look, we're not any longer in a global, as a part of the global village, to put up with someone breaking this law that we all signed up to about use of chemical weapons. So I think the answer is yes, but I'm glad that it was a slap across the wrist and it hasn't become part of a much larger campaign, because there are some people who quite clearly would like us to do regime change, and we should not get involved in the civil war there.
No, and of course we have taken part in regime change in Iraq and indeed in Libya with some quite severe consequences. But you say if we're unequivocally clear. I mean, I just want to quote to you, Lord West, Boris Johnson, who's writing today in the Sunday Telegraph, and he says, a significant body of information, including intelligence, suggests that the Assad regime was behind the chemical attack at Douma that killed 75 people. Suggests. That's not particularly strong, is it?
Well, that's partly my worry, and I think historically there's no doubt that I think there's very little doubt that Assad has used chemical in the past.
Yes.
But on this occasion, I mean, speaking as a military man, I cannot see any military logic in him and his forces using chemical attack in an area that they were just about to take over anyway, because they'd effectively won the battle in that part of Syria. And so what on earth was the logic militarily in doing it, knowing that it would probably bring some form of retribution? Whereas if I'd been one of the very unpleasant groups that are opposing Assad, it would be hugely in my interest to try and pretend there'd been a chemical attack because of the fact that it might destabilize the regime. And that is what really worries me, and why I hope that, and I accept if the Prime Minister says she has got that proof, then I jolly well hope she has got it, because on that basis, yes, the attack. But if it's not that sure, I think we need to be extremely careful.
And, of course, knowing that ISIS and some of those rebel groups not only have chemical weapons, but have used them themselves during this civil war, the incentive now for them to have another usage of chemical weapons and say it comes from Assad, knowing that America's locked and loaded. I mean, we could be in something of a trap here, couldn't we?
Well, I think it's certainly a risk which we have to be very, very, I think we would have to be very, very aware of. And although I believe that if there is proof, it's right that we did that slap on the wrist, which is larger than the last one we gave, and hopefully he will get the message if he did do that. It's not going to make this civil war any shorter, and I'm afraid what the poor, benighted people of Syria need is an end to the civil war. It now looks as though that can come because Assad will win. He's not there yet, but it looks as though he's winning, and he is a loathsome man, but the people who oppose him are maniacs and loathsome as well. And, you know, there are no good guys in this. Everyone's bloody horrible, and civil wars are merciless, bloody and nasty, and we need to stop the fighting.
Yes.
And then we need to work on diplomacy things. And I think our policy as a government since 2012 has been poor. It was no good ignoring Assad and pretending he didn't exist. We should have actually still kept links to him, even though we don't like him, because he is a fact of, he's a fact of life on the ground. And if he were suddenly deposed and his regime went, there would be 6 million Christians and Alawites who would either be killed or displaced. I mean, there are no good people in this war.
No, I agree with that. And it was why I found it incredible that William Hague and David Cameron were trying so hard in 2013 to get us to arm the rebels. But Parliament, of course, did reject that. Lord West, I want to say thank you very much indeed for joining us on this Sunday morning. Now, if I'd said what Lord West of Spithead had just said, you would say I was a ranting conspiracy theorist. But I was kind of teasing in the first hour a bit about this. We know that the forces opposed to Assad have chemical weapons and have used chemical weapons. They are losing. Russia backing Assad, they are winning that civil war and winning it big time. ISIS and other rebel groups are being defeated. They've now been pushed back into relatively small enclaves within Syria. It is massively in their interests to make the outside world think that Assad has used chemical weapons. And as I say, if I said that, you'd think I'd been smoking something funny and gone nuts. But we get it there, from the former First Sea Lord saying he needs a bit more certainty to know that we've done the right thing here. If we have that certainty, he thinks the short, sharp shock is the right thing to do. And, all right, maybe even I could go along with that if it wasn't for the fact that within 24 hours, we're locked and loaded, we're ready to go again, and we've given, in my view, a hostage to fortune. Hey, that's what I think. But tell me, are you prepared to back further airstrikes if this situation escalates? And I'm going to ask Steve in Brentwood and Essex that very question. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Hello, Nigel. Lovely to speak to you.
Good to speak to you, ma'am.
Look, the thing is, the situation is nothing to do with the Syrian people. It's to do with Western ideas of Middle East control of the oil situation. They don't like Assad. They want to remove him. They don't want the Russians to have control of the Syrian oil and gas supplies. And it's to do tied up with Dutch oil. I'm afraid that, like us with Europe, we are being used as pawns on the dashboard. And that's what it's about. It's to do with oil control, and they don't like Assad in there. And I believe this gas attack, I think it was conjured up. There is no possibility of Assad doing it. There was no reason for him to do it because he already was winning the war.
Yeah.
And as for Theresa May, I feel that she's acted illegally. She's attacked a national country without no UN agreement. She's done exactly the same as Blair's done. She's gone down the same path as Blair, probably egged on by him and Alistair Campbell. And the fact she's got no sanctions from Parliament, she hasn't even waited from the report from the Weapons Inspectorate. She's jumped the gun, but I think behind that, as I say, is the control of the oil, and they want the whole situation to be under Western
You
control.
feel pretty strongly, Steve, about this, don't you? My goodness me.
Well, I've worked in the Middle East, and quite frankly, I can see the pictures quite clear to me what's going on. I'm afraid what you've done, Nigel, you've done absolutely fantastic over the 25 years. In fact, you gave inspiration to the people of this country, and we owe you a debt that we'll never repay.
Well, I tell you what, the next time I'm in Brentwood, Steve, you can buy me a drink. How about that?
Thank you very much.
Well, Steve, you're a star. Thank you. And Steve, wow, feeling very strongly that we've kind of jumped the gun. I wonder, I am very much for us having good, close relations in military terms, in intelligence terms, and in trade terms with the United States of America. But that doesn't mean we have to follow America every single time they do something. I wonder whether this might have been one of those times when the Prime Minister might have said to the President, should we just wait a little bit? Should we just give this a couple of days? Just think this through a little bit more. I don't think if she'd done that, that would have damaged our relationship with America one little bit. Oh, people say, of course it would. But remember, 1966, Harold Wilson in Downing Street, Lyndon Johnson comes to visit him and says, look, we've got the special relationship, you're our closest ally, you must send troops to get involved in the war in Vietnam. And Wilson said, you know what, we're not going to do that. And within 15 years, we had the Thatcher-Reagan relationship when arguably America and Britain were closer than they'd been at any single point since the American Revolutionary Wars and their own independence. So just sometimes in a relationship saying, nope, we're not going to do that, doesn't do it terminal damage. Actually, it might just make the other side think, I wonder whether they've got a point. I wonder whether Mrs. May did try to reason with Donald Trump. Did try to say, have we really thought this through? I don't have much confidence that she did. Perhaps I'm wrong. Talib says on Facebook, the USA and the UK rushed the bombs down on the Syrians' heads just a day before. This is a really important point Talib is making here. Just a day before the independent inspectors were due to arrive to ascertain if there was a chemical attack in Douma and who's responsible. Talib, you're absolutely right. The OPCW were due to go in there the next day, but we weren't prepared to wait. We had to crack on and do it before they arrived and destroy, perhaps, many of the places that they could have gone to inspect after they'd been and seen the site of this attack. They could then have done their best to go and look at these supposed, maybe they are, chemical weapons factories, but we didn't do that. We didn't wait. Militarily, there was absolutely no reason for these strikes to take place on Friday night. None whatsoever. Why the rush? Talib, very, very important point. James is calling from Beaconsfield. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you.
Good to speak to you. So what do you think?
Okay, imagine you and I are neighbours and I'm a bit of a git.
Right.
And you and I have a set-to one evening.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning you come out and your car's been scraped all over and your tyres are slashed.
Uh-huh.
Who are you going to take the baseball bat to?
I'm going to come round to you, James, and bash you, aren't I? Is that right?
Absolutely.
Even if you're not guilty?
Well, it's more likely that I am guilty. It's just you can't prove it. And sometimes you just cannot prove things, fully. Now, we've done the airstrikes, great. If we need to do what we need to do is explain to Assad and explain to Putin, you cannot get away with this behaviour. If you do, we will take you out of power by whatever means are necessary.
OK, James, well, first things first, I wouldn't bash you, I'd try and talk reason to you. But can you imagine, James, if we decided, right, what has happened here is so bad that those attacks on Friday night are just a preliminary of a much bigger series of strikes. Actually, the time has come, and British governments have said it before, the time has come to get rid of Assad. I tell you what my fear is, James. Those distressing pictures that you see of dead and distressed children, if you remove Assad, you will see those pictures multiplied manyfold. And I think we've really, James, got to be careful here. We may not like Assad, but as Lord Wester Spithead said a moment ago, both sides are pretty bloody horrible in this civil war, and I quote. And I think, James, if we were to move on for regime change, I think we would cause more human suffering and misery than if we left alone.
There are things which are unpalatable and things which we find very hard to swallow. That I agree with. But you've got to look at the long term. We have got a decision to make. We either get really heavily involved in this and stop it dead, or become neutral like Ireland and other countries.
Okay.
But we've got to say it either comes to an end and we will do whatever, however unpalatable, nasty or whatever. Let me ask you one other question.
Quickly, James,
How much chemical weapons are currently in the UK by foreign adversaries?
I'm sorry, I wouldn't know that, would I?
No, you cannot prove a negative, you can only prove a positive. So at the moment, we don't know how much chemical weapons is in the UK. More importantly...
No, we don't know.
And this is a real important thing. We don't know how unstable those chemicals are. And secondly, and more importantly, the countries who make the weapons, if there was an earthquake, God forbid, or some natural disaster which can release the chemicals into the
air. Yeah, and you know, I mean, natural disasters always happen. James, I've got to move on. I thank you. I wouldn't want to be your neighbour necessarily. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:18.
Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
I think we've been feeble on Syria, to be honest, and I've thought that for a long time. When chemical weapons are used, I think it behoves the world to respond, and when chemical weapons are used on the streets of our own country, I think it behoves us to respond.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Energy bills weighing you down? Make light work of yours with Project Solar UK, a Which trusted trader installing solar panels that could save you hundreds on your energy bills and pay you back on energy you don't choose. So for a greener wallet, text solar to 66777 and claim your government entitlement before it runs out. That's solar to 66777.
Sunshine every day. Project Solar UK.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper, with 3 superb supplements. There's Event, our indispensable TV and entertainment guide. There's You, Britain's best-loved women's magazine. And This Weekend in Life, our inspirational lifestyle supplement. Jamie Oliver admits he's taken a bit of a beating, but he's bouncing back to declare a new war on junk food, with his healthiest ever recipes for children, and top cooking tips for you and your whole family. Jamie Oliver exclusive interview and recipes. Only in Life with this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
No, this is not the sound of a refreshing drink being enjoyed outdoors in the sun, but the sound of itchy eyes being relieved. Optrex Acti-Mist 2-in-1 spray helps relieve itchy and watery eyes. Now go and have that drink in the sun if you fancy. Optrex Acti-Mist, so you can open your eyes to spring.
You've worked hard, your company has flourished, and you're deservedly reaping the fruits of your labour. However, you're now ready to retire and call it a day. But how do you ensure an orderly exit to realise maximum value from your business? At Barnes Rofe, our specialists have been busy helping clients with bespoke succession planning and business exit strategies. Call us today to help plan for your retirement. Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for mature businesses.
Block management. 2 very simple words. But what do they actually mean? Well, there's budget approval for starters, then service charge invoices, health and safety paperwork, cleaning, gardening, maintenance, inspections, contracts, insurance, emergency call-outs, and a whole lot more besides.
So for complete block management solutions, just remember 3 simple letters: ABC. ABC Estates will take care of all your day-to-day management, leaving you as happy as Larry. See abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
Are we prepared for further airstrikes in Syria if this situation escalates and continues to get worse. I'm pretty sceptical in every way about the first one we've been involved in, but, having read my newspapers this morning, it would appear that everybody agrees the government did the right thing. It's just a question about whether there should have been a parliamentary debate. No. There are lots of people out there who really are worried about this, and I know there is a big principle about the use of chemical weapons, but as Lord Wester Spithead said, surely first we have to prove that it was Assad that actually used them. And by the way, while we talk about this, down near the House of Commons, right at this moment, there is a gathering of some really important people. Anna Soubry and Chuka Ramuna, and maybe Nick Clegg's down there, I don't know. But they're gathering ahead of a rally they're going to have this afternoon up in Camden, North London. And it's a variety of groups that have come together. And it includes Open Britain, the European Movement, Scientists for the EU, Healthier In, etc., etc. And they're demanding a vote, another referendum, effectively. Gina Miller, of course, will be there as well. I do notice, when I look at these groups, that some of them have been funded by the European Commission, some of them have been funded by George Soros, and I don't know about this being a people's referendum. It looks very much like an establishment, as Kate Hoey said earlier, who simply can't accept the result. I think they're going nowhere with this now. I think Jeremy Corbyn has really decided that Labour will not be pushing for a second referendum, and I think that's that. I think the ship has sailed. That's my view. But let's get back to, are we prepared to get involved in further military escalation in Syria? I'm going to ask Jess in Enfield that very question. Good morning. Nope, something gone wrong there. I tried to get Jess in Enfield. Didn't work. Let's move on then, and let's try George from Croydon. George, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. That little thing just made me forget what the question was. But I'm one who, like yourself, does not want to see any more military action. I think the astonishing thing is that what Lord West was suggesting, though he didn't say it, and what you're suggesting, and what many people believe, is that our own government is prepared to lie to us about the most serious issues imaginable in order to create a situation they want to create, which actually is risking embroiling us in a nuclear war. I mean, this is just so, talk about unbelievable. It's so astonishing to people that it takes their breath away. And I think there's a very large number of people in this country now whose minds have been really kind of changed by these kind of events in terms of what we think our government actually is.
George, I mean, you just used a big word, and you said our government's lying to us. How do you think they're lying to us?
Well, I mean, for a start, I mean, there's nobody's reporting of what the white helmets are. The white helmets were formed by James Le Mesurier, an MI6 officer, and they're embedded with Al-Qaeda forces who are now our allies, even though they're the people who are supposed to have blown up New York on 9/11. The whole thing is so monstrously, fantastically twisted and ridiculous that how can we believe anything, Nigel?
Well, the white helmets, George, for those that don't know, the white helmets are there in Syria with physically white helmets who are seen to be first responders, when buildings are blowing up and things like this. But the truth of it, George, is that the white helmets do have a track record of actually doing a lot of work for the opposition forces in Syria and effectively being a mouthpiece for them. But because they're seen to be lovely and good and kind and wearing white helmets, we kind of believe what they tell us. And I think there are, George, some very, very serious questions about their role, very serious questions also about who actually funds them.
Yeah, well, it's on record. This guy Mesurier who's an MI6 officer. I mean, they're a film company who were formed to produce pretexts for us to attack the Assad government. I mean, the war is a filthy thing, but we are not the good guys here. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Well, I think our problem, George, I think our problem is we're endlessly saying there's this side and that side. Let's pick the goodies and the baddies. And I think Lord West got it right a moment ago when he said there are no goodies in this. And I personally, I do understand the argument that we do not want chemical weapons to become part of normal warfare, if there is such a thing as normal warfare. I do understand that, but I'm not sure that we've advanced that one iota with this attack. And if these attacks work, George, well, Trump did it last year, didn't he? And now here we are doing it again.
Just one more thing, though, Nigel. I mean, the idea that we're kind of heartbroken, or that we have this terrific care for how these Arab peoples are treated, and killed and so on. It's just like the moral high horse doesn't sit on people who've started all these wars and killed about 1.5 million of them, at least, maybe 2 over the last 15 years.
It's a lot of people.
I mean, it's just dreadful, you know.
It's a lot of people. George, I'm not opposed to military action. I think there are times when you absolutely need to use military action, but I've been very opposed to the recent military interventions, which have been done very often on very, very spurious arguments, and designed that regime change, getting rid of the Arab nationalist dictators, without, it seemed to me, ever a plan as to what was to come later. No strategy. And I feel with this... I mean, do you know, 10 days ago, Trump was saying he wanted to pull all American influences out of Syria, and now here we are, 10 days later, launching missile strikes. And George, my feeling is that without strategy in these things, you get blown around by short-term events.
And I say the Russian role here, Nigel, just one last thing.
Yeah.
The reason Russia are even in Syria is because they worked out, in my view, they worked out some years ago that once they started jailing these oligarchs, that they were a target of the West as well for regime change, and they've gone into Syria to prevent these crazy Al-Qaeda people overthrowing Assad, because the next place they would be sent would be into the Muslim areas of Russia to destabilize and overthrow him. That's why he's there. It's self-defense. It's not adventurous.
No, George, thank you for your call, and particularly thank you for raising this issue about the white helmets. And I've been deeply suspicious of what their role has been there for some considerable time, and I want to know who funds them. I wonder whether it's the same kind of people who are funding the protests looking for a second referendum today. I think it probably is. Now, Jess from Enfield, we tried once, we're going to try again. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, gotcha. Right, the floor is yours.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
Okay, so just a few things I want to say. I'm actually married to a Syrian woman, a Christian Syrian.
Yep.
All my family in law are Syrian. I've been to Syria a few times. I was actually there in the New Year. When I was there for the New Year, it was dangerous times in Damascus. They was being attacked daily with mortar shells and rockets from the terrorists in eastern Goa.
Yep.
And they just started to win. A lot of the area has been taken back by reconciliation rather than military action, which is good.
Yes.
Now everyone there is terrified. They're absolutely terrified, not of their government, of our government and America's government.
Have you spoken, Jess? Have you spoken to your Syrian family since the attacks?
I have, yeah, I have. I was speaking to my mother-in-law just this morning.
Right.
Like I say, everyone there is very scared. Things are very uncertain right now.
And what do they think? What do they think America, Britain and France were trying to do?
Well, they obviously... I call them terrorists because I don't think they're rebels. But they think we've supported this group of people from the start, and this is us trying to change the balance, to tip the balance. They don't know why. They don't understand why our government is supporting these kind of people that want to kill all of the Christians and the Alawites and the Shias and all of the other minority groups there. Why they're supporting them over a government army comprised mainly of conscripted soldiers. They're the sons and daughters of Syria. They're not foreign-backed terrorists.
No, Jess, you make a very powerful point. I've wondered about this. However awful Assad may be as a person, who knows? But actually, under many years of his regime, you've had cafes in Damascus where Jews, Muslims and Christians could all drink coffee together in the same bar. Whereas, as you say, the opposition forces were basically, for many Christians, and you will know this better than I do, they're literally being wiped out. Tell me something, Jess, just very quickly, because I'm very interested in this. I mean, do your Syrian family believe that Assad carried out that chemical attack?
They don't, no. I'll make it clear, a lot of people there don't support Assad any more than we support our government.
Sure.
They don't believe that they would do this. You've got to bear in mind, a lot of the soldiers in the Syrian army, when this happened a few years ago and the areas got separated, a lot of these guys were split up from their families because they was in places like Aleppo and Homs fighting. So as they're taking back these areas, a lot of them are being reunited with their sisters and their mothers and people like that. Why would they drop chemical weapons on their people that are their own families, their neighbours?
So if Assad didn't do it, Jess, who did?
For me personally, and for a lot of people in Damascus right now, they feel like this whole thing was staged. Why? Who knows? I think a chemical attack did take place, but it certainly wasn't the Syrian government.
And who would have staged that, Jess?
I believe it would have been the terror groups that are involved on the ground there. And they don't care about the people. A lot of these guys aren't even Syrian. They've come from other countries, Chechnya, Afghanistan, these places. Can I just say one thing as well, Nigel? I know you're short of time.
Very briefly, Jess. Yeah, it's a fascinating phone call. But one last point, please.
From my personal point of view, I'm somebody who's quite on the left. I want to know, where is the left on this? Where's the million people that marched against the war in Iraq? Where are you all? Mobilise, come out.
Well, I think they're out there, Jess, and they're looking for leadership. And from Jeremy Corbyn this morning, they've got precious little of that, because he is getting involved, frankly, in detail. He's getting involved in legality and procedure. He hasn't outright condemned what's going on. Jess, phone call of the morning. Thank you very much indeed. Late to the news, I apologise. It's 11:32 and time for the news with Andy Ivey.
Jeremy Corbyn says Parliament should have a say on when military action is taken and is calling for a War Powers Act to guarantee MPs a vote. The Prime Minister will make a statement in the Commons tomorrow about yesterday's missile strikes in Syria. One of the biggest names in business, Sir Martin Sorrell, has stepped down as Chief Executive of the advertising giant WPP. He'd been in charge for 32 years and was recently cleared of an improper conduct allegation. The government has allocated £61 million aimed at trying to cut plastic pollution in the oceans. The money will be spent on research and developing ways of improving waste management. LBC weather, cooler, cloudier and windier for most today. Rain will move north-eastwards, highs of 15 degrees.
LBC travel in Kent, there are queues on the M20 westbound. 2 lanes stay closed between junction 2 for Root and Brands Hatch and the M25 at the Swanley interchange because of an accident. There are also queues in St Paul's Cray on the A20 Sidcup bypass eastbound. A lane's closed from Crittles Corner to the M25 at Swanley because of an accident. In Surrey, it's looking heavy on the M25 anti-clockwise. A lane's closed between junction 6 for Godstone and junction 5 for the M26 because a car's broken down. And on the rail, South Eastern are running a replacement bus service between New Cross and Dartford via Bexley Heath. That's because of engineering works at Lewisham. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Want to get your garden blooming? At B&Q, do it for less this weekend with 20% off all outdoor plants. You better hurry though, offer ends Monday. So for low prices on beautiful plants, you can do it when you B&Q it. Offer starts Friday 13th of April, seeds, turf and garden bulbs not included.
To find out more about our boiler installations and maintenance schemes, visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Relax, it's Trust a Trader. You pop in your postcode and find great tradespeople right on your doorstep. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com.
Clear a house, clear an office, clear a little bit, or clear loads of it. With Clearabee, getting rid of rubbish is quick, easy and affordable. Choose our man and van rubbish removal service and we'll come and clear almost any rubbish from almost anywhere. Because whatever you want rid of, there's a Clearabee man in a Clearabee van who can do it professionally and legally. Book now at clearabee.co.uk.
Clear rubbish easily. Clearabee.
Do you hear that? That's the unmistakable sound of cashback. Do you hear that? That's the sound of cashback too. There it is again. Listen.
Earn money back on every pound spent at places like petrol stations, supermarkets or local restaurants with your American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. No annual fee. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Terms and minimum annual spend applies.
Spotted this week in Lidl. Treats from the Alps. There's a range of German sausages from $1.69. Viennese apple strudel just $1.79. And cans of Fest beer for only 99p. Cheers to that. Visit Lidl this week to see the full taste of the Alps range. Subject to availability, NI may vary. Selected stores while stocks last.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
So, should we intervene more in the Syrian situation if things deteriorate, or do we need to be? Now, I'm personally very cautious about what we've done already, and I'm fascinated as this debate is going on, and particularly with the contribution that we had from Lord Admiral West, that there are an increasing number of you beginning to say, did Assad really do this, given that he's on the verge of winning this war? Now, I told you, very important people were meeting down in Westminster, and this is the big campaign, the People's Vote, they're calling it, but really, let's be honest, they just want to rerun the referendum because they don't like the result. So let's go to LBC reporter Matthew Thompson. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm fine. So tell us where you are and what's going on.
Well, as I'm here at the launch of a new cross-party campaign for a People's Vote. It's happening in Smith Square now. We've just been moved around the corner from College Green, just a stone's throw from Westminster. And it's attended by about 24, I would have thought, students from a couple of student groups. One called Our Future, Our Choice, and one called For Our Future's Sake. And they're both student-led groups which essentially are seeking a democratic way of overturning the Brexit vote. And I spoke to a couple of them a few moments ago and got their thoughts on why they're here.
Basically, I've come along because I think that the Brexit deal is going to really screw over a lot of young people throughout the United Kingdom. I'm personally from Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland voted Remain, and we're not being listened to at all in the negotiations. I don't feel like any of what's been discussed in Parliament will actually affect my family and my sister's kids. I'm especially worried about them growing up in a world post-Brexit. So I think that we should get a vote on that final deal to basically have our voices heard.
The Prime Minister has promised that there will be a meaningful vote in Parliament on the final deal. Is that not enough?
I don't think so, because I basically don't trust Parliament to make decisions on this because the Labour Party has not come out with any kind of strong line on Remain or Leave or what they think on Brexit, and I say that as a Labour Party member. I don't think that there is any political party specifically that is giving us the voice of the young people, so that's why we're here. We're actually here to influence that and make sure that whenever that does happen, our voices are heard.
In your own words, tell me why you're here.
We're here because we have a situation where most MPs think that this deal is going to hurt the country. We have a situation where most people who voted for Brexit believe that this deal leaves us a less sovereign country. We have a situation where the other half of the country never wanted this anyway. And so if nobody's going to be happy with the outcome, why shouldn't the people get a say? Why shouldn't the people be able to say, we wanted more sovereignty, we wanted a better NHS? What you're going to provide is the exact opposite, and we, the people, demand a people's vote on the final deal.
A people's vote on the final deal, of which the outcome is what? What is the choice? What are you asking people to vote on? In or out? Or
the choice
yes or no?
The choice has to be where they actually get to look at the deal line by line. That's the difference. It's a hell of a lot more democratic if the people actually get to see what they're signing onto, rather than a vote in the dark, which was what happened
Okay,
before.
but if they don't like the deal, what then?
Well, if they don't like the deal, the only answer that any responsible parliament can put before the people is to remain in the European Union.
And there you heard, really, Nigel, the crux of the argument here. I mean, critics...
I'm struggling with that. Surely, if we don't like the deal, we just leave anywhere. I mean, you could argue that all round the houses, Matthew, couldn't you?
Well, precisely, and I think critics of this people's vote notion, in which I don't think it's too much to assume you might be one, Nigel, would note that it's a sort of interesting use of the language of Brexit, this people's vote, to effectively, when I speak to these people, subvert the referendum. That's what these people want to do. Now, the politicians who are fronting this campaign, that's the likes of Anna Soubry and Chuka Umunna, they're much tetchier when it comes to that. They aren't talking about rerunning the Brexit referendum, but they haven't really answered the big question, which is then what are we asking? Are we asking in or out? Are we asking go back and negotiate a better deal, which seems unlikely, or is it as simple, to borrow a phrase, no deal is better than a bad deal, and we crash out? And that is the essential question, which I don't think is quite yet answered, and I will endeavour to find that out as I spend the rest of the day following these guys around, and hopefully speak to Chuka Umunna or Anna Soubry or one of the other leaders of this campaign.
Please do tell them, Matthew, that the referendum was the referendum. It wasn't supposed to be the best of three, because what happened... I mean, this could be an endless process otherwise, couldn't it?
Well, Yes, it could and it couldn't, but then you do also have to listen to some of the concerns that were raised there. I did speak to one gentleman who's attending this event today who himself voted leave, and he says, well, look, I voted leave based on certain assumptions, whether that be £350 million for the NHS or whether that be this, that or the other, and he doesn't feel that the current deal and the current shape of the deal, what he called a mess, is representing what he initially voted for. And that's partly the problem of a binary referendum on an in-out vote without actually, an in-out choice rather, without actually specifying what it would look like.
Yeah.
But there are concerns, and I think people do feel that they would like a say on the terms of the deal. But the question that does have to be answered, as I say again, is what does this vote look like? Is this referendum 2.0, which they don't seem prepared to concede, or is this simply another way of telling Theresa May to go back and renegotiate whatever deal she comes back with from Brussels?
Yeah, well, Matthew, you're going to have a fascinating day. Thank you very much indeed. And I just, I don't think it's going anywhere. Look, I'm not happy with the deal the government's negotiating. I'd have done it very differently. But you know what? We didn't vote for the deal. We didn't vote for economic predictions of success or failure. We voted to leave. That was the question on the ballot paper. We voted to leave the EU and, to coin a phrase, take back control. Hey, right, now back to what do we do? Are we prepared to accept further military action, or have we perhaps gone too far already? Going to ask Sally Ann, who's calling from Clapham, that question. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you.
Good to speak to you.
Yes, look, I totally disagree with more military action. I mean, haven't we done enough damage to that area over there? I think, the most constructive thing they could do is reconstruct the UN, which is useless. I mean, and if you look at the people who are on the non-permanent side of it, plus, these 5 permanent members on the Security Council, I mean, we're never going to get anywhere. They sort of control the whole world, really. They're always vetoing things when they shouldn't be. I mean, I travelled all through Syria. It was the most beautiful, well-educated, beautiful place, lots of history. And a funny thing is, a friend of mine over here, he actually studied with, he's an ophthalmologist, he actually studied with Assad, I mean, the guy, I don't know what on earth happened, how he made this transition from being an eye surgeon, to being, I mean, I know he's not a good guy, but I think that, they definitely want regime change, which they were working on. It was only when the Russians got involved, and yes, the Russians aren't good, but it was only then that we started getting rid of ISIS.
I mean, we were very, very clear, Sally Ann, weren't we? I mean, Cameron's government was very, very clear that they wanted regime change. That is why they wanted to give money and weapons to the rebels.
You have to create a monster, don't you? And I don't believe for a moment that he went and gassed those people.
Don't you?
No,
Sally Ann, people would say you're a conspiracy theorist. So
I'm not a conspiracy. I have friends, in the Middle East. I've travelled all through it. I've worked out there, and I just think what is happening is disgraceful. And the fact that the US, the UK, and France, who happen to be people who have big oil companies too. Just look at Iraq, how that's been divvied up. It's still a mess, but the oil's still pumping out of there. And let's not forget about the gas lines, There were 2 different people vying for gas lines, which does affect Syria. So no, I'm not a conspiracist, I'm a realist. And it just really bugs me that people think we're going to solve things by killing and bombing more people. I mean, I don't agree with everything Jeremy Corbyn says, but thank God we've got someone like him. And look at, Tony Benn. Back in, when was it? I think it was back in 2015. He stood up in Parliament, which was almost empty. Imagine if it had been, to do with politicians getting raises. They would have been in there. The Parliament was nearly empty, and Tony Benn stood up there talking about the damage we would do supplying the Middle East with weapons. And look what's happened.
Well, he took a very consistent, very pacifist line on these things. Sally Ann, I'm not a pacifist. I'm not a pacifist like Tony Benn, or probably Jeremy Corbyn in reality. I think there are times to use military force, but I'm not sure now is one of them. I thank you very much indeed for your call, and Sally Ann pointing out what a lovely country Syria was. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
105 cruise missiles struck 3 Syrian chemical weapons sites. Whatever you think about launching these strikes, now that they're over and World War III hasn't ensued, what was all the fuss about?
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
When the beast from the east struck, Snow fell, temperatures plummeted, and the country ground to a halt. But Swale Heating leapt into action. Over the week, we helped over 10,000 homes stay warm and safe. To find out more about our boiler installations and maintenance schemes, visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Spotted this week in Lidl. Treats from the Alps. There's a range of German sausages from $1.69. Viennese apple strudel just $1.79. And cans of Fest beer for only 99p. Cheers to that. Visit Lidl this week to see the full Taste of the Alps range. Subject to availability, NI may vary. Selected stores while stocks last.
Selling your business doesn't have to be as stressful as running it. Break free. Sell the Hilton Smythe way. Visit thehsway.co.uk.
This is the sound of someone with a million things to do waiting in. Your time is precious. We're with you. So our engineers call ahead to let you know when they're on their way. Search British Gas Home Care. 95% of engineers call ahead.
Freshening up your fencing? At B&Q, you can get 12 litres of Ronseal Fence Life One Coat for just £11, Ronseal Precision Sprayer for £23, and a Ronseal Fence Life Brush for just £7.98. So for low prices on garden project essentials, you can do it when you B&Q it.
It's in my hair, my eyebrows, it's even up my nose. They make painting look easy on the telly, but let me tell you, it's not. The wall looks like it's been finger-painted by a giant child. Who's going to rescue this? Oh, relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Actual professionals who know what they're doing and don't leave the place looking like, well, my face. Now I can concentrate on the important stuff. Whispering peach or dirty mayonnaise. Visit trustatrader.com.
Well Man and Well Woman are the leading multivitamins for men and for women. Comprehensive formulas with vitamins B6 and B12 to support normal energy release. Live life well. Well Man and Well Woman from Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Should we take part in further military strikes if there is another use of chemical weapons? Or, and this is very interesting, you know, from the moment we had Lord Wester Spithead on, to other callers and people who've spoken to relations in Damascus this morning, there is an opinion coming through this show of increasing scepticism about the fact that Assad was guilty of this. And even Boris Johnson, you know, when he says why we launched this action, is really not terribly certain that Assad did do this. Far less certain than he is about what happened in Salisbury. I'm going to ask Kami, who's calling from Norwich. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I wanted to say that I'm probably one of the few people who agree with what happened.
Okay.
I do not think for a minute that the reason was Assad. You have to remember they did not target Assad. They targeted a few locations where no people were supposed to be.
Yes.
The main reason was the Russians. The Russians have acted with impunity for many years, and they got emboldened to do more and more things. They saw that there is no reaction when they invaded Georgia, the Crimea. They used plutonium in London. They downed the plane.
Polonium,
sorry.
Not plutonium. Gosh, that would have been... We'd have known about it, Kami, if it was plutonium,
yes,
wouldn't we?
I do apologise for that. And they used a chemical weapon to try and assassinate another person. And continuously, there was absolutely no repercussion. And now they got so emboldened that they have even threatened to directly attack American vessels, which was obviously just...
This was the Trump saying the missiles are coming, they're smart, new and shiny, and this was them saying we'll shoot the missiles down, and maybe even the source of the missiles, which of course would be the US Navy, which is there in the Eastern Mediterranean.
And that just shows how confident they were that there will be no repercussion. And that was the problem. We had to show them that enough is enough. So it doesn't matter whether it was Assad who fired the chemical weapon or not. The fact is, the Russians vetoed any independent inspection of the area. We cannot support any Russian-led inspection of anything after the doping scandal.
No, but so you see this then? You see this as we're using humanitarian reasons as cover, effectively, for saying to the Russians, so far and no further?
Yes.
Okay. No, you put the point very clearly, but it's quite dangerous taking on Russia, isn't it, in some ways?
Well, we're not. People scared of Third World War. They have to remember the Russians are not interested in direct military conflict with NATO and America, just as much as we are not.
No, I think it's they don't want it. Of course, they don't want it, but we don't want it either. Carmi, can I just put this point to you? Whatever we think of Putin, whatever we think of Russia, whatever we think of some of the ludicrous things that one or two of their ambassadors say around the world, they are busy fighting ISIS, who are our enemy as well.
Yes, they are, but that doesn't matter. The Russians have continuously vetoed any attempt of anyone trying to stop any
through the United Nations. Yeah. No,
no. We could not let this continue. They just had a blank check to do whatever they like.
Okay, Carmi, you've made the point very, very well. Thank you very much indeed. On Twitter, I used to listen to Nigel Farage and agree often with what he said. These days, he sounds even crazier than Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you for that on Twitter. Look, it's not me putting out wild conspiracy theories. We're getting it from people with links to Syria. We're getting it from senior military figures. All I did was to ask a question. Some people are coming on and answering it, all right? And I'm worried now. I'm worried. We're locked and loaded, says the Trump administration. We're ready to fire more missiles, says the UK government. We know that Assad, with Russian help, is winning this war, winning this civil war in Syria, winning it big time, winning it quite quickly. And we know that the opposition groups have chemical weapons and have used them before. What is to stop them next time putting on an attack and saying it's Assad that did it, and income yet more missiles? If we were to really, really attack that regime in a heavy way and topple Assad, I think we'd make the world a lot worse. Andrew is calling from Docklands. Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Nigel. I think there's a thing that's I'm just struggling with. It's just there's a lot of people, there's a lot of politicians and me saying we're doing good in the Middle East, and you've heard it, several people have said that this morning, and I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what that mindset is, looking at all the destruction and the death that they've caused out there, and they still say, and you still speak to people, well, we've done good. And I came across just a very short little quote here from the philosopher Ayn Rand, and I just think it sums up exactly this mentality, and it's only going to take a second.
Go on.
He said, if a man believes that the good is intrinsic in certain actions, he will not hesitate to force others to perform them. If he believes that the human benefit or injury caused by such actions are of no significance, he will regard a sea of blood as no significance. If he believes that the beneficiaries of such actions are irrelevant, he will regard the wholesale slaughter his moral duty in the higher good. And it's the intrinsic theory of values, that's the mindset that our political class have, that produces a Robespierre, a Lenin, a Stalin, or a Hitler. And it's not an accident that Eichmann was a Kantian, and you know what Immanuel Kant was. And this is the philosophy that is underlying what is going on today.
Andrew, you can have a philosophy and you can follow it, you can have a belief system and you can follow it, but doesn't there come a point when you say to yourself, we keep trying this, we keep getting this wrong? Doesn't there come a point when they admit to themselves, actually, continued military intervention has not been a success?
Well, they don't. They think it's like what they're trying to do is just destroy everything that was there and then rebuild it the way they want it to be, which is just the most horrific thing I can possibly think of. You just change things slowly, and you show people through free trade and through genuine friendship, like the American founding fathers said, genuine friendship and entangling alliances with none. And you bring people on board, and where guns, cross borders, you've got to stop that. You've got to have free trade crossing borders. That's what stops it, and it just takes a little while, and they're impatient just for their own ideology. And
Andrew, we've launched 120 of these missiles. The French a few, the Brits a few, the majority, the Americans. Are you convinced that we waited long enough to absolutely have the proof that it was Assad that conducted this chemical weapons attack?
No, and in fact, it just points to the opposite. They acted very quickly because they knew that there was going to be proof there that would perhaps disprove that he had used.
Because because inspectors were due in the next day.
Yeah, you've destroyed evidence. You do that, and you do that pre-trial or something.
Andrew, you're another conspiracy theorist.
Oh, dear me. Well, there's a lot of people dying because of these conspiracies. So and I don't think it's us that's conspiring.
Thank you, Andrew. Point very strongly made. There we are. There's another one. You see. I really hope a lot of the leader writers on our papers, all of whom today seem to say that either May's done absolutely the right thing or it would have been OK provided we'd had a bit of parliamentary scrutiny, are listening to the calls and the messages we're getting here in LBC this morning. There is an absolutely massive gulf between what the London mainstream media and political class think about Syria and the way ordinary folks think about our intervention here. John is calling from Glasgow. Hello, John.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. So, come on, tell me, did she do the right thing or the wrong thing?
Yes, I definitely do think she's done the right thing.
Okay.
She's the Prime Minister of the UK, and she has every right to do this. They broke the law. They broke international law by using the chemicals. Now, you may say that, well, why would he do this if he's winning the war? Mm-hmm. Exactly for that reason, he would do it, to make an excuse, to say that, I never done it, why would I do it? We're winning the war, so why would I do it? So,
Hang on, John. If he's winning the war, what benefit is it to him to kill 75 people?
Because, as I just said, he can then switch the blame to us by saying it wasn't him. Why would I do this? This is Assad saying, why would I do this when I'm winning the war? So basically, it's a double bluff, if you like. But at the end of the day,
John, hasn't he got more important things to do, like beating ISIS?
Well, yes, we have. But hasn't Assad got more important things to do than killing thousands of people?
Well, John, he is fighting. There has been a brutal civil war with huge casualties over about the last 7 years.
I understand that.
But all right, okay. Let's, for the purposes of this, okay, Assad did it. Let's say he did it. Do you think our missile strikes will be more effective this year than the American ones were last year?
I do, because he's got the support of probably the few of us at the moment, but I think he will get the support, and it's been spoken by the UN that they agreed it was Assad that done it.
Okay.
But again, Nigel, I'm just on about why May had done it, and to me it's shown courage rather than weakness, as the limp Labour Labour leader said, that it showed weakness by doing this. I think that she showed courage to do it, and I just hope she would pass that courage on to a stance in other things that we're going on about now, Europe and everything else, because it seems to me that she has. I think she's done very well as a Prime Minister because she was in a position where there was no plan B to do anything else for this country.
No.
I think she's done well as a Prime Minister.
No, she inherited that. Well, John, I tell you what, if she shows real strength in the Brexit negotiations, I'll be cheering her too. Well, thanks, everybody. Fascinating. Big gap between thinking in London and thinking in the country. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show. I'm back tomorrow night at 7, at 3 this afternoon. It's Andrew Castle. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, girls as young as 12 are among more than 10,000 children being given contraceptive implants on the NHS. Can this ever be justified? Before that, mourners joined South Africa's new president and the supermodel, Naomi Campbell, for a funeral service for Winnie Mandela in a packed 40,000-seat stadium in Soweto yesterday. But should we be celebrating someone best known for burning her opponents alive? But first up, a barrage of 105 cruise missiles fired from warships or US, British and French strike aircraft smashed into 3 Syrian chemical